The Drakmori had swept across 17 star systems like a plague of living darkness. Each world fell within days, some within hours. The beast stood 3 stories tall, its obsidian carapace reflecting the fires of burning cities, its 6 eyes blazing with an intelligence that had learned to savor fear before feeding. Military historians would later estimate it had consumed over 2 million soldiers across the inner colonies, each warrior adding to its strength, each victory making it hungrier for the next. Commander Elena Vasquez watched through her tactical display as evacuation ships lifted off from New Geneva's primary spaceport. The Drakmori had landed on the planet's surface 6 hours ago, and already 3 military divisions had been reduced to screaming echoes in its wake. Nothing could stop it. Plasma cannons had proved useless. Orbital bombardment had only seemed to annoy it. Even nuclear strikes had left it unharmed, merely pausing to feed on the radiation before continuing its rampage. "Commander," her aide's voice cracked through the comm. "The beast is moving toward Sector 7. Vasquez felt her blood turn cold. Sector 7 housed the civilian refugee camps, families who couldn't secure passage on the evacuation ships, the elderly, the infirm, and worst of all, the children's ward of New Geneva General Hospital. 200 kids too sick or too young to be moved safely. All remaining units, she broadcasted on all frequencies, converge on Sector 7. We make our stand there." She knew it was hopeless. They all knew it was hopeless. But sometimes that's what humans did. They stood between monsters and the innocent even when standing meant dying. The Drakmori carved through their defensive positions like paper. Vasquez watched good soldiers, friends she'd served with for years, disappear into that writhing mass of shadow and teeth. Each scream that cut across the battlefield felt like a nail driven into her heart. The beast grew larger with each meal, its roar shaking the very foundations of the hospital behind them. Then the weapons fire ceased, not because they'd won, but because there was no one left to fire them. The Drakmori stood alone on the battlefield, its massive head turning toward the hospital, toward the children. Vasquez lay pinned beneath the wreckage of her command vehicle, watching helplessly as the creature approached the building. Her legs were crushed, her rifle empty, her squad dead. She could hear the beast's footsteps, each one like thunder, each one bringing it closer to those kids. The hospital's emergency lights flickered and died as the Drakmori's shadow fell across the building. With casual contempt, it began tearing through the reinforced walls, peeling them away like the skin of a fruit. Somewhere inside, Vasquez could hear children crying. But then something impossible happened. A small figure appeared in the breach the beast had torn. A little girl no more than 6 years old wearing a hospital gown covered in cartoon spaceships. She had no hair. Chemotherapy, Vasquez realized with a stab of anguish, and an IV pole dragging behind her as she stepped into the rubble. The Drakmori paused. Its 6 eyes, each one the size of a grown man's torso, focused on the tiny human child. For a moment that stretched like eternity, predator and prey regarded each other in silence. The girl looked up at the monster that had devoured armies. She took another step forward, her bare feet careful on the broken concrete. The IV pole clinked softly as she dragged it with her. Vasquez tried to scream a warning, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. The beast's massive claw, a talon that could cleave a battle tank in half, rose into the air above the child. The commander closed her eyes, unable to watch. But death didn't come. When Vasquez opened her eyes again, the little girl had reached out with one small pale hand. She was touching the beast's lowered head, her palm resting against its obsidian carapace just between its central eyes. The Drakmori had settled onto its belly, bringing its great head down to her level. "It's okay," the child whispered, her voice somehow carrying across the devastated battlefield. "I know you're scared too." The beast that had consumed worlds made a sound unlike any it had made before. Not a roar of hunger or triumph, but something softer. Something that might have been a whimper. Other children began emerging from the hospital. Drawn by some instinct older than fear, they gathered around the girl and the monster. Small hands reached out to touch armored hide that plasma fire couldn't scratch. Young voices whispered words of comfort to a creature that had known nothing but violence and hunger for eons. And the Drakmori wept. Not tears of water, but something like liquid starlight that fell from its great eyes and pooled in the rubble. Each drop seemed to carry away some darkness from its form, some weight it had been carrying across the void between worlds. Vasquez watched in amazement as the beast began to shrink. Not dying, but changing. The edges of its carapace softened. The razor-sharp talons retracted. The blazing hunger in its eyes dimmed to something almost gentle. The children continued their work, offering the one thing the beast had never encountered in all its eons of conquest: compassion. When rescue ships finally arrived 3 days later, they found something unprecedented in the annals of galactic warfare. The Drakmori sat in the ruins of New Geneva like a living mountain, but peaceful now, almost meditative. Children played in its shadow, using its great form as a jungle gym. The little girl, Maya Chen, the medical records would show, still visited every day, reading stories aloud while resting against what had once been the galaxy's greatest terror. The xenobiologist would later theorize that the Drakmori had been driven mad by isolation, by eons of existing as the only member of its species. They would propose that its aggression had been a twisted form of loneliness, its consumption of others a desperate attempt to feel less alone. But Vasquez knew better. She had seen the moment when everything changed, when a dying child had looked at a monster and seen not a threat to be feared, but a being in pain that needed comfort. That was humanity's true strength, not their weapons or their courage, though both served them well. It was their ability to extend love even to their enemies, to see the lost child hiding inside every monster. The beast that had devoured armies learned to tend gardens under the guidance of human children. And in the files of the Galactic Council, a new entry appeared in humanity's official record. Species possesses inexplicable ability to pacify hostile entities through application of empathy. Recommend immediate alliance status.